In this video, we're talking about a bone-chilling, otherworldly creature that seems to have come straight out of nightmares, crawling through people's neighborhoods, maybe even yours. These groups of people we're covering have encountered traumatizing sightings of it back to back to back. On April 21st, 1977, at about 10:30 p.m. at night, a group of friends were driving down an open road called Farm Street in Dover, Massachusetts, just sort of hanging out, enjoying each other, enjoying their night out as a casual car ride. But none of them were really considering just what was about to unfold and unravel right before their eyes in this car ride. The three boys driving together were Bill, Mike, and Andy, all 17-year-old teenagers, and Bill was the one behind the wheel, making sure that he was just being a responsible teenager, keeping his eyes on the road as he should have been. But this was going to be an unfortunate circumstance, as he was supposed to keep his eyes on the road, but by doing so, he sort of started to notice something in the near, dark, shadowy distance. Now, it was completely, purely dark, and really the only lights in sight were those that were the headlights on Bill's car, and even so, maybe about 30 yards ahead in the street, Bill's lights were illuminating something crawling through the street in front of him. What Bill saw completely took him off guard. It completely puzzled him. He didn't even know if he was actually seeing anything. Maybe his eyes were playing tricks on him. Maybe he was hallucinating something that wasn't even there, because at first his brain told him maybe it's a dog or a cat or some common animal that's just strolling along in the street. But as he kept driving down the road, quickly approaching whatever animal this might have been, pretty much right on top of it now, he quickly realized it wasn't a dog, and it wasn't a cat. It wasn't really any animal that he had seen before. It was instead this alien-looking creature that was crawling up a stone wall on the side of Farm Street. But as he was trying to get a clearer look at it, squinting his eyes, just trying to focus in that few seconds of driving by, trying to just get a picture of just what he was seeing, and then in one instant, this creature sort of just ever so slightly motioned and turned around as he was climbing up this wall, and he realized this wasn't anything he'd seen before, and it definitely wasn't even of this earth. And before he could get Mike and Andy's attention, trying to get them to look at what was beholding right before his eyes, he couldn't even really get a word out. He was scared, startled, stone cold. Nothing he could utter in that moment, and before he could do anything, as soon as the car was approaching, the creature quickly scurried off. He scared off this creature, and unfortunately, he was the only one that would account for witnessing what had just happened. At this point, Bill was just absolutely disturbed, frozen in silence after what he had just seen, and so he thought, you know what, that's it. That's it for tonight. I've had it. And he decided to go drop off his two friends, Mike and Andy, at their houses, and he would just head on home himself. But as he got home, as he started walking into his house, his dad was still awake, waiting for him to get home. And his dad also noticed that Bill was quiet, scared, and looked really sad, really upset about getting home that night. He noticed that his son was a little too quiet, a little out of it, a bit too out of character for him, and he said, "What's wrong?" And in that moment, Bill just gave him the whole spiel, just let it all out, venting to his dad about this alien, weird, unearthly looking creature that he had just seen driving down this dark road with his friends. He would go on to describe this creature to his dad as having a very disproportionately shaped sort of watermelon head. It didn't have any hair. It had sort of sandpaper tan-like skin. The whole creature was very plain looking. It didn't even have a nose or ears, and he didn't even recount it having a mouth. And one certain quality that stood out like its eyes were these long, thin, slender arms and fingers that Bill had seen as he was driving by the stone wall. This creature used those slender, claw-like fingers to grasp over the edge of the wall and leap over as Bill was driving past it. And he would go on to describe its eyes as these large, sort of reflective, like orange marbles, lidless, bright eyes. And Bill was just the first unlucky individual to have seen this creature, but unknown to him, it was definitely not done on Earth. It was actually still roaming around that entire neighborhood near Farm Street, plotting, lurking in the shadows, about to terrorize two other groups of kids. It was just another couple of hours later when another boy named John was with his girlfriend named Kathy, and they were hanging out at her house. It was late, around midnight. The two were just talking, listening to music, and enjoying each other's time. And since it was getting late, John was preparing to head home, but he didn't yet have a car. He was only about 15 years old at the time, and all he really could do to get home at this time was walk. And so on out Kathy's front door of her house he went, on foot, and everything seemed fine for the most part. It was a regular routine for John and Kathy to do this. He knew the route pretty well, and he would be home in no time. Or maybe not. About half an hour into his walk, he noticed something off into the near distance lurking in the dark night of the shadows, and it wasn't trying to climb up a stone wall, and it wasn't trying to scurry off away from him. Immediately, John stopped walking to try and get a better, clearer picture of what was right in front of him. Initially, he thought maybe it's one of my neighbors from a nearby area, since it looked relatively familiar but had a slightly smaller stature. So John thought, it's already pretty late at night. This is already kind of weird and uncomfortable, seeing that maybe there are two people that don't really know that they're in front of each other since it's so dark out. Let me try and figure out if this really is one of my neighbors. And he decided to call out to them to just say hello, but silence. They said nothing. And he thought, well, that's a little weird. I mean, we're pretty close to each other. It's dark. Why aren't they saying hi back, or at least saying something? And their demeanor is a little off. And now John felt a little threatened, confused, and even a little scared, so he tried to assert himself more to this person that he's seeing that is now 20 feet right in front of him, and he didn't want anyone to mess with him. It was a 30-minute walk home. He was underage. It was dark. It only made sense. So he said to the figure, Who is that? But in that moment, just nothing. Still just silence between both John and this figure, so he just kept observing, and he could now see a little bit more pronunciation in their movements, and it was just this ever so slight waddle back and forth. Something that their posture was doing a little something weird, and he noticed a little bit bigger it would get, and a little bit bigger and bigger. And now he could see that the figure was directly approaching him. And before he could really do anything, run, fight, talk to this figure just to see what was really going on, it quickly, in that instant, without John being able to even make another motion, it turned around on its slender legs, its whole body shifted, and it quickly just started scurrying off down into a gully beneath some trees, like a animal with no sense of direction, just erratic. That is when John got a good look at it. He would describe it as a sort of hunched over, maybe hairless monkey type of looking figure with a giant, oddly shaped head that sort of resembled the top of a figure 8. John was now just absolutely baffled, terrified, frozen like a statue, trying to unravel his thoughts and determine just what he just experienced in the middle of the night. He's alone, and he could not take another step to finish his walk home, unable to do anything and unsure of what next decision he could make to just get himself home safely. But luckily, there was a car that was driving out of a corner from down the street that he was walking on, and as it approached him, he would flag it down and end up hitchhiking with this random person in this random car. Better hitchhike with an actual human being in a car that he could sort of recognize, rather than a figure that didn't even look like it was of this earth. Eventually, he would arrive back home at around 1 in the morning, and like Bill, he would never forget what he witnessed that night. Would anybody even believe him? Would anybody believe Bill? I mean, these boys were teenagers. We saw a glowing-eyed figure that resembled a sort of skinless monkey that had a gigantic head that looked like an alien. I mean, it sounds like something crazy. And just the next day, 15-year-old Abby and 18-year-old Will were about to go inside and settle in for the night. It was around 12 a.m., and they were just about to walk into their front door. But before they even could make it through the front door, behind them, they both heard this blood-curdling retch screaming sound, this screech that sort of resembled a hawk mixed with some sort of snake hiss. And as she was completely terrified, Abby turned around to see what exactly she was hearing. This screeching noise. Was there a monster that was about to pounce on her and attack from behind? And she was right to do so. She was right to think that it was a monster, because as Abby turned around, there in the driveway, she saw something that looked eerily similar to what Will and John would have described. This figure that had a weirdly shaped head. It was just waddling there and lurking behind Will's car, just watching the two of them walk inside their house. Abby was really the only one to get a good look at it, because as she was looking at it, it was looking directly back at her, and she would describe it to say it had this really weirdly shaped, really big head, and its eyes, it had these glowing eyes that were looking directly into my eyes. In that same week, throughout the next couple of days, all three of these teenagers would go to the local newspaper. Bill, John, and Abby would end up wanting to make reportings, and they would go and draw this figure to post all over the newspapers to see if anybody else in the neighborhood, in the town, would have seen this same alien-like creature, this screeching figure with the weird eyes and the big head. Well, several different local newspapers would end up picking up the story and circulating around town, because come to find out, other people had also seen this figure. Bill even left a note on his depiction of this drawing of the figure saying, "I, Bill, swear on a stack of Bibles that I have seen this figure lurking around our neighborhoods." All of these other witnesses were giving their own quotes, different sightings about the nearby areas and how it was lurking, trying to terrify them, meeting them in their backyards and nearby streets and shadows of the different neighborhoods. As the story kept circulating, it just spread like wildfire. There was other people in other areas near Dover, Massachusetts, that ended up seeing this creature around the same time frames that the three teenagers did, the Boston Herald and the Boston Globe. Everyone was covering it, and more than three teenagers had seen it, and it would be coined as the Dover Demon. They would say that it would be lurking in the trees, stalking, observing people with its large glowing eyes, just waiting to terrorize its next victim. What kind of creatures have you seen lurking around your neighborhoods in the shadows? And would you ever go to Dover, Massachusetts to see this Dover Demon for yourself and uncover exactly just what kind of other planet it might have come from? Let me know.